That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Save Yourselves, the directorial debut of Eleanor Wilson and Alex Huston Fischer, which premiered at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival and will be available October 2nd, 2020, courtesy of Bleeker Street.
The film's called Save Yourselves!
Exclamation point.
Exclamation point. It opens with a quote, right? Like the year mankind lost Earth. Is that where I got that from?
Yeah.
So it's very obvious.
So it's very
obvious what's going to be happening.
It's 2020.
Yeah. So the basic story is a couple, Neil and Sue.
Jack
and Sue.
Mm-hmm. Neil was from another film.
Whatever. Jack and Sue, they are like millennials living in New York. They both kind of have like...
Brooklyn, specifically.
Brooklyn. They work like doing sort of like middle of the road jobs that neither of them seem very passionate about. They also seem like a very sort of bland couple.
Well, they're very granola. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So...
Which is the point.
Yeah. So they go to a wedding party and they interact with a friend and they're sort of saying like they need to sort of get away and think about what they want to do with their life. And this friend mentions he has a cabin in the woods that he's remodeling. They're welcome to stay there. So they decide to take this trip as an opportunity to disconnect from everyone. Social media, technology, we're just going to go and interact with each other and just be. So they head up there. Mm-hmm. But before they do, Sue obviously requests time off from work. And the response is, "You're fired." Mm-hmm. So she thinks that this is a really big opportunity to really get some personal work done. Mm-hmm. They get up to the cabin and we know right away something's not right because that night when they arrive...
They also disconnect themselves from no phones.
Right, they turn off their phones and put them away. Yeah. So the first night they're both sitting like in the front yard looking up at the stars, and there are many shooting stars, or what they think are shooting stars. Uh-huh. So obviously we know something's wrong. The next day they are just interacting, but we see a lot of like little weird things happening. They get into a bit of an argument. Mm-hmm. So Sue decides to go turn on her phone and check it. And she gets some weird voicemails from her mom about like rats in the city and they're attracted to ethanol or that they might not be rats. And then she turns off the phone because her man walks in. So while all this was happening, there was like what looked like a furry footstool in the cabin that they noticed had like moved.
They called it a poof?
They call it a poof.
It's like a decorative ottoman?
Yeah, like a footstool. Mm-hmm. They noticed that it wasn't where they saw it previously. Mm-hmm. Well, they noticed that it actually moves, and then it has like a long, like, what would you call it?
Some kind of projectile.
Like how Spider-Man spits his web. It has like a long tongue that it
prehensile tongue.
And it can move really fast, far distances. So of course they're freaked out. They lock themselves in like a bedroom. They check their phones and realize that...
Well, now there's no service, but she admits to Jack that she had checked her phone and all of the liquor has been drained from a small hole in the bottle, and so was what his starter.
He has a starter for bread, which, you know...
Is it bread or...?
It's bread, and the fermentation creates ethanol, so...
Does it really take months?
I don't know about that, but anyway... They have access, because Sue had checked her phone the day before, she has a bunch of voicemails, even though she doesn't have service. So they listen to the voicemails and realize that like aliens are basically taking over, and they're these little poofs, mm-hmm. and they are killing people and they consume ethanol. So like the gas out of all of the cars. Mm-hmm. They decide to escape. Thankfully, there is a car at the cabin that runs on diesel, mm-hmm. so it's still active because the aliens don't want it. They drive down, like, attempting to go somewhere. I don't know where they think they're going. But they come across a couple who are killed by the aliens, and there's a baby in the car. So they decide to take the baby, and while they're doing that, someone steals their car. So now they're stuck in the woods, and this is sort of the ending of the film. They're stuck in the woods, and they start hallucinating, which we think is the result of one of the poofs farting on them. Mm-hmm. And they spend a long time, and it's a very delayed response to the fart. And they spend quite a bit of time like tripping balls. Mm-hmm. And then the aliens like transport them up into the heavens, basically.
They find this like weird vertical sheath, I guess you call it, that's transparent that they're moved to explore with the baby that they find after they wake up from their trip. And I think it strangely lures them there because they are transfixed they have signal on their phones. And while they're doing that, this sheath ends up enveloping them without them noticing. And then they levitate.
The two, Jack and Sue and the baby, are transported up into the sky. But then we notice that many people are being transported up into the sky. The end. So we assume that maybe the aliens are...
Well, I think based on the title and based on their interactions with poofs, they stop for the baby. It compromises them. They don't try to kill the poofs. They try to lure them away with wine. And then they also they do kill a poof, but they do it in a way that they're protecting one another. They're willing to sacrifice themselves. So I'm thinking that the message is they're deemed worthy of saving, and all of those humans are being lifted somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might be too deep a reading for.
That makes sense to me. I don't have a lot to say. This movie, like the basic story, if we would have told it in 20 seconds, it sounds interesting. Like it's going to be amusing and kind of crazy, but it's not as irreverent as I would have hoped, and I didn't think it was funny.
It's not. I was amused at several times, but yeah, it's not laugh out loud funny. I didn't, really care for either of these characters. You do warm up to them a little bit, but not to the point. You did. A little bit, but not to the point of. There's some funny things about them, like her. She wears contacts that she eats, which is strange.
Something you would do.
I think no, I wouldn't do that. I laughed at her. Because she's losing her contacts along the way and they're lost in the woods. I'm like, where are your glasses? And she was, I threw them in the garbage because they were so ugly. And I know exactly how that feels. So there are things
which I find funny because her haircut was ugly. So you can have that haircut, but you won't wear glasses to see.
We're all vain in our own ways.
Yes.
So they are interesting enough to make this film work how it does, but I think it would have been a greater feat had we actually felt anything for them, some kind of warmth. But because otherwise they're just, to me, the word that keeps coming to mind is they're just very granola. They're a ball of stereotypes. The only thing is that they're not vegan.
Well, I only have 3 real notes. The first one was, these people are annoying. I think there's a very fine balance, especially in comedy, and I'm not a comedian or a comic writer, but I think when you're going to write sort of these annoying, grating characters that are admitting that they're kind of pathetic, because they're talking about how they haven't amounted to much and we haven't done much with our lives. Sue tells Jack, like, you're 34 and what have you done with your life? So, and then the best part of the film to me was Jack has a moment where he admits that he doesn't feel like he ever learned how to be a man. Mm-hmm. So he's somewhat vulnerable. But aside from that, they're not very, they're not the kind of people I was rooting for. Because I even have a note that says, these two should die, I guess. Based on their own, they're saying, we don't know how to do anything. Well, survival of the fittest, I guess. I don't know.
Well, at the wedding party at the beginning where all those people are drunk and that one girl says, our lives are meaningless, but only if you think about it.
Well,
it's basically...
I relate to these themes a lot,
yeah.
But I also don't think I'd be fun, as a character in a movie either. I think I'd be grating after a while. Well, he doesn't really... That's how I felt. They didn't really feel like they were... if you do survive, what are you going to do?
I think we'd be more like... Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf in this situation?
Probably.
Drunk.
My last note is I don't normally like babies, but the baby in this movie is so cute.
The baby is cute. Baby Jack.
Yeah, baby Jack was very cute.
It basically is just Sunita Mani and John Reynolds through the whole thing. Because I know that Amy Sedaris was in the cast. I kept waiting for her to pop up. I'm like, the movie can't be done yet. I didn't see her. She's a voice. She's John.
That was your... You know what? If Amy Sedaris watches this, I want her to know that I only agreed to watch this film because I thought you were in it.
Technically, she is. She was in this...
She's just the voice of Jack's mom, so we only hear her voice for a second.
This has fooled me before with her filmography, because I remember renting This is back when Netflix sent me discs of a film Justin Theroux directed, starring Mandy Moore. I don't remember the title. It's like 2007, and I'm like, oh, Amy Sedaris is in it, and she's in it for just like the most fleeting moment, and I hated that movie. What did you give this film?
What would you give it?
3 out of 5, I think. It's amusing. There are things you can kind of explore here. I did like the poofs. I did like how they looked and moved, and yeah.
I would give it 2.5 out of 5.
Fair. It's okay.
But, you know, if you're like him, you might find it amusing, I guess. Anything else?
No.
Bye.